Good
and
evening,
women,
good evening,
how
good
we as a people.
evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around our great panel and introduce each and every last one of our outstanding panelists, starting with the man who has the best art that we know of, and that's our very own Joseph Harrington. Joe?
Well, thank you, Nikki. I'm Joe Harrington, retired public health and healthcare professional. Worked at three different hospitals, worked for the city and the state health departments. Retired in 2017 from the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I was the regional health officer as well as an administrative law judge. And it's nice to see my Alpha brothers on this in this venue as well.
Outstanding, outstanding. To the urologist of the stars, our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason.
Good evening. Good evening, Nikki. Good to see everyone. I want to thank you and Congressman Davis for making this platform available. I don't know if I'm the only one hearing that, uh, but I'm grateful to be here and have been working around in this field
Outstanding and
for many years. I'm sorry.
outstanding, and thank you so very much. No, it's okay. I think we're having just a little feedback. So I'm going to ask, if you are not speaking, to please mute your device, because that may be causing the feedback. To the Wolfgang Puck of healthcare, our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you to all my esteemed panelists. Always excited to, answer questions, and particularly in an environment where, we all have different angles that we're coming at. A lot of the people who follow me because I'm a doctor who focuses on metabolic health, low carb, keto, carnivore, and I just love being on a panel where we have, different approaches, but we all are interested in the same thing, which is to helping people achieve metabolic health. So I welcome those who are following me from my channel, and I appreciate you guys joining in. And in fact, I'll just ask anybody that's checking us out, just put in the chat comments where you're following us from, where you're at, and we look forward to a good conversation.
All right. Thank you so very much. To the one who is known on the streets as Dr. 100, that's because she's always keeping it real. That's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Green.
Good evening. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Congressman, for creating this space for community. We talk about a lot about safe spaces. It's one of those catch terms we like to throw around these days. And it describes a space where people are free to be themselves and inquire about whatever they like to inquire about and receive discussion. And basically, it's a space where when I was growing up, we called it fellowship. So thank you for creating this space for community to fellowship. And I'm excited to be here.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much to my colleague who leaves us and goes and has fun in the sun. And I know that the falling temperatures in Chicago have scared him away. That's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham.
Nikki, I've heard that some like it hot, and I might be one of those people. I'm a retired physician. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs. I then spent 2 years working in the representative's office, and it was an eye-opening experience. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here with my colleagues, and I'm going to try and answer your questions if I can.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much to the man who says that I threaten him to be here every Monday night, but he seems to be always on time. That's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller?
I just want to say good evening and thank you all for having me on this forum, and thank you and Dr. Yes, I just want to say thanks for inviting me to be on this platform with my colleagues, and we're all interested in having a healthier community, and we're here for that purpose, to do what we can to offer what advice and to answer any question that might help to improve the healthcare of people in our community.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much To the gentleman who is a doctor by day and DJ by night, that's our very own Dr. Pete. Dr. Pete. Dr. Pete Thomas.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Congressman, for creating this forum where I'm excited to be with my colleagues and to help answer some questions from our listening audience. As you know, I'm an internist by training, men's health, HIV medicine, chronic disease management. I'm looking forward to helping clear some maybe misleading facts that gets into our community. So I'm looking forward to this.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. I want to say hey to Don, who is here with us, to Audrey Jaycox, who is here. She says, hey, Doc Tony, Lansing, Illinois. I want to say hey to Connie Taylor, who is here with us. I want to say hey to Nellie Purnell King, who is here with us just as well. I want to say hey to Commissioner Carrie Steele, who is here. Hey, Carrie, how are you? Congressman?
Well, let me just say hello to all of our esteemed panelists and thank them for being here and for being there. Of course, I'm in DC because we had a health bill that I wanted to make sure that I voted on, that we voted a few minutes ago. And of course, that bill proposes some additional monies for federally qualified health centers as well as some other things. Although it might take some money from hospitals. And so there are always these things taking place that require trade offs. And yet we hope that the balance and the ultimacy of them are the most beneficial, that will do good things. I'm reading from the USA Today, and it says gene therapies for sickle cell disease okay. Treatments can help long suffering patients get their lives back. Federal officials have approved 2 gene therapy treatments for sickle cell disease. Welcome news for tens of thousands with the inherited blood disorder that causes terrible pain crisis and early death. Sickle cell is the most common disease to receive approval for gene therapy treatment, following decades of development and years of approvals for therapy for people with rare conditions. The therapies will be extremely expensive and limited at first to patients 12 and older who have the most severe form of the disease, predicted to be about 20,000 of the 100,000 Americans who suffer from sickle cell disease. Yet Friday's Food and Drug Administration approval offers a viable option for thousands of people whose lives have been dominated by frequent, unpredictable, lightning strikes of searing pain. And then they go on and name some people. But I thought it would be great if we could talk about gene therapy and what it is, and how after years and years and years of research, there seemed to be a breakthrough. And we happen to know the people and have worked with the people and have done things with Vertex. Last year, we had Vertex with us at something called the ALC, which is the annual legislative conference that the Congressional Black Caucus has. I serve as the caucus, the Congressional Caucus for sickle cell. along with a Dr. Burgess, who is a Republican and whose office is around the corner. He's from Texas. And of course, he's retiring at the end of this term. And I'm really going to miss him greatly. But other people who have been working seriously on the issue is Representative Barbara Lee from California, who has been very helpful. And of course, in the Senate, we have been fortunate to work with Senator Tim Scott, who is also a Republican from South Carolina. Um, Chris Van Hollen, Senator, and of course, our wonderful Senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker, as well as others. But these have been some of the most active members of the House and the Senate working on sickle cell issues. Well, a lot of people don't know what gene therapy is. I don't know much about it either. I know a little bit, but not much. So I thought if we could talk about gene therapy a little bit and acquaint our viewers and listeners with that and delve into this business. We hope to have a meeting established. Caleb Gilchrist, Dr. Caleb Gilchrist, who is my primary health policy person, has been working on trying to get a meeting with Health and Human Service people who work the sickle cell arena. And we hope to maybe meet with them before the week's over. But that's kind of what I think we'd love to talk about. And if you all could enlighten us, it would be very helpful.
So while you guys are deciding who's going to go first, just want to say hey to Virginia Knight, who is here. She says hello to everyone. To Teresa Stewart, who is here with us just as well. Linda Johnson is here, and the Carnivore Mommy is here. Well, Maya, you seem like you got a lot to say. I can see it all in your eyes. Do you and Pete want to begin this discussion? Because I see both of your eyes wide open.
Really? Is that what my eyes was telling you? Okay, I'll take a shot at it. I was debating whether or not I have an idea to explain what gene therapy is, but I need my as we call it when I grew up, a rat tail comb. But I use my hands, and I was looking around like, oh, and then I got locked, so I have no clue where it is. Okay, so gene started off with what is a gene? A gene is basically the blueprint that tells our body a lot of stuff and how we're designed. It's like before they build a building, there's a blueprint. They take those blueprints, they build a frame. They take the frame and they build the drywall and the bricks around the frame. And then, according to the blueprint or the workup, it tells how high the floors are, how wide it is, where the ceilings are, where the restrooms are, where the elevators are, everything. And then the mock-up sometimes even includes or has notes about the color of paint on the wall. Okay, so when we take that and apply it to our cells, genes are the blueprints of our DNA. My gene blueprint said, okay, B53. My gene blueprint said, I don't know if you can see it, have brown eyes. It said have lips shaped like this. It said have an earlobe that is not attached to the side like that. It said have a tongue that can do this, because that's not what everybody can do. Have fingers that can do this. Wait, am I on the screen? So wait, this. Yeah, y'all not ready for me. Yeah. So all that is baked into have fingers that can bend back. Oh, I'm trying to get in the screen. Bend back like that. My DNA, my gene blueprint said have the architecture that would have hair like this texture. These are locks with my natural hair texture. It even tells those things, right? And as you know, like if you think about your family, people usually have about 2,500 different genes, but two sets. You have two sets, mama, mommy, daddy. But look, even those two sets, the little schematics on the gene is different. That's why I look different from my brother. That's why I look different than my sister. We're basically the same. It's like going to the same chain of restaurants, but each one is different, you know. But we have in our genetic makeup a set. So here's one set. Here's the DNA, and here it is. Okay, so DNA is usually a helix. So if I took this and start spinning it around and going from up down, that's why you see that little twirl for the DNA. But I'm just gonna lay it flat right here. Right on here are my genes. Occasionally, so let's take my sister. My sister is 4'11", right? And say this is the one I'm moving is the height one, right? Mine said B53, her said B411, B53, B411, B53, B411, right? Occasionally, a gene will change itself and come in and look like that, right? And you're like, where did that green come from? Well, that's a change in the genetic makeup, or sometimes we call it a mutation, you know, but sometimes, you know, that can cause different diseases, things like that, right? And so when that happens, that's where they're proposing gene therapy is coming in. And so on December the 8th, like the congressman said, FDA approved gene therapy for people with sickle cell. So sickle cell, let's say this is me without sickle cell. This is me with sickle cell. Oops, there it goes, right? So what gene therapy, the one specifically that the congressman is talking about, does, it'll be like, hold on, let me get that. Let me take a couple of genes out, come over here. And it's going to patch it up, and it's going to take this green. They take it to the lab, take the green mutation out, put the mutation, make a version of it that thinks it's the gene that I had when I was a baby. This is what they're telling the gene to go. And it's like, when you put you back in Maya's body, you tell them, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been like this since I was a baby, right? So they take that hemoglobin gene, because that's where the sickle cell one is on, and they replace it with something that mimics fetal hemoglobin, meaning I'm the original. You're not the original. You can't be. Y'all ever seen those movies where they try to play like, you know, you try to clone it and they're like, I'm the original. No, I'm the original. Then you ask it a question on you could, you know, you and the original. No, and that's how you found. Okay. Fetal, they put it back in the body and say, go in there and say you the original. Say you fetal hemoglobin. And it goes in, they put it back in your body. It says, I'm the fetal hemoglobin and I look like this. I look like the hemoglobin without sickle cell. And the body says, you know what? You're right. You're the original. We're going to stop doing that. We're going to stop doing the one with the sickle cell. We're going to stop making the gene that turns into it, makes our blood cells turn into a sickle, because that causes problems. And we're going to make the one without, right? So when you look, now we zooming out. First who's in the DNA. Now we're zooming out. We're zooming out to the person. Now the person doesn't have those hemoglobins or those red blood cells that are turning into sickles, that are causing pain to the body because it can't get action, you can't get things through. It's getting stuck. Now we don't have that. So that person, it you know, from a human standpoint, I go to my doctor, I go to the specialist, they take some blood or plasma, they take it out of me, they go to the lab, I come back, they put some in me, and what I experience as a person is like, oh, all of a sudden I'm not having these problems when I get my triggers like cold or stress or things like that. I'm not having the chest problems. I'm not having the problems breathing. I'm not having those pains in my joints, because now the body's making the version of the red blood cell that does not sickle, and therefore oxygen and all those other nutrients are getting to my blood. So that's what's happening inside the DNA, and that's what's happening that the person sees.
Look out. Fascinating.
Yeah, I'd like
Go
to
ahead,
ask Dr. Pete a question. My question is, why don't you, since Maya did an excellent and exceptional job explaining gene therapy and how it's done and what is done, why don't you explain what sickle cell anemia is, so that people understand what's being changed and why it's being changed?
Yeah. So sickle cell, well, there's basically is a disorder where it's a genetic disorder where patients produce a funny shaped hemoglobin cell, and that funny shaped hemoglobin cell looks like a sickle. It looks like a hook instead of being circular like a normal blood cell. It's sickled like this, and so what happens is that cell is dysfunctional in its ability to carry oxygen to the body. So that's the goal of red blood cells is to carry oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the body. That includes your muscle, your heart, your brain, kidney, everything. And so when those patients produce their normal or red blood cells, those cells are not functional and they carry a low amount of oxygen to the rest of the body. And so that is sickle cell disease. There's some people with sickle cell trait where they don't have the actual disease, but they have the trait that could produce those sickle cells, those sickler cells, and so that's sickle cell disease. Now, what happens? What people tend to die from sickle cell, something called acute chest syndrome, and it's basically like a blood clot in your pulmonary vasculature. So now most patients can live with sickle cell, but they have a debilitating sort of lifestyle in and out of the hospital due to what we call pain crisis as a result of those funny shaped cells that's not able to carry the appropriate amount of oxygen to your blood. And so many of those patients have to have transfusions. They get treated with something called hydroxyurea, um, and they're on multiple pain medicines, which in it to itself causes problems as well. I don't know if any one of my colleagues want to add to that.
Well, Pete, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that pain is serious, and as a urologist, we used to see these patients that had sickle cell, and because one of the things that happens is that those cells don't flow smoothly, and they clog up. And when it clogs up, and it doesn't lot those cells all meet clogged up, then the part of the body doesn't get not only the oxygen, but they don't get the red cells at all, and and can cause some real serious issues. I saw it a lot. In what happens is if those cells don't get the nutrients that they need, then they end up scarring, and sometimes that scarring can be permanent. And so this is why this is something. One of the reasons why we're trying to always be trying to use therapies to stop that and to facilitate normal, smooth flowing of the blood vessels through the little pipes that we call arteries, so that the oxygen can be delivered. But with this situation, as you already said, is a problem. The question will be as we move forward, and I'd ask my colleagues because I don't know the answer here, but for everything, there's always something we have to look for to think about in terms of reaction or a complication. And I don't know if we have enough data yet to know what the potential complications might be, who this is going to be best for. Is it just going to be children or is it going to be adults? I don't know the answers to that yet.
Yeah, I think the question around complications is probably unfortunately going to be to be determined. I think whenever you're dealing with genes, you're always at risk for something not going well. However, science is fairly specific. I think when you think about hemoglobin A, which is the type of hemoglobin that adults have, that we can, we want our hemoglobin to look like, it's probably just based on my knowledge of this science, it's probably a little easier to think about sickle cell and making a genetic change that'll make that cell function like it should, or that hemoglobin. Cancer is a little trickier, and I think when we think about cancer, we think about mutations that are beyond the scope of like sickle cell. Sickle cell is very specific, but cancer is like, man, that thing can change so quickly. So even if we have gene therapy that can alter our genes in such a way that our cancer cells can then be targeted, because truth be told, one of the reasons why you don't get cancer, because you're always at risk for cancer every single day, because we live in a toxic environment, rather it's what we eat, the air, everything that's we're around, but our body seems to keep it in check. So even as mutations are kind of occurring, our immune system's able to kind of do its job. But if we were able to then find defects and then change the genes in a favorable fashion with gene therapy, then you could see how that could be beneficial for cancer. In the world I live in, I think beyond just gene therapy, I think about, again, why did you get cancer in the first place? What led to the the cell not being happy and starting to overgrow? And one of the things so it was promising about gene therapy in my brain is that for people who have genetic cancers, and I'm making this point intentionally, all cancers are not genetic. So that's a problem, because if your only treatment focuses on the genetics of cancer, then you're going to miss cancers, right? One thing that's consistent about cancer that we find is that there's this dysfunctional mitochondria. And when you have a dysfunctional mitochondria, you see that in all cancer cells. And so if we then understand, okay, if we have a dysfunctional mitochondria, if we can treat that metabolically, then maybe we have a way to deal with cancer in a way that's beyond just the genes. And what we've learned through something called the Warburg effect is that cancer cells particularly thrive in an environment where they are being basically, through fermentation, they're using glucose as their primary fuel. So some of the research that's ongoing beyond genetics is talking about how you can use that approach to help treat cancer by starving the cell. And in that setting, cancer cells have a hard time thriving. So the work of Warburg, who won a Nobel Peace Prize, is now being taken up by others, like a gentleman by the name of Professor Thomas Seyfried. And he has found that by taking that approach, you can actually treat people who have cancer, and you can also help people prevent cancer by starving the cancer, by not giving it its primary fuel. So I think I'm saying all this to say that when you think about these innovations, rather for sickle cell or cancer, and sickle cell in particular, in this case, is going to be off the chain amazing, particularly if you've taken care of kids with sickle cell or adults. You have to think about not just one thing. This is a soup of options now. And so is it the onion in the soup? Is it the garlic? It may be the whole soup. So when I talk to people about these great innovations, I always remind them that, can we also think about other ways to keep you healthy? Like for a sickle cell, what can we do to reduce stress? What can we do to make sure you get enough sleep? So even if we have something in front of us that may, in this particular case, cure sickle cell, if I'm talking to that patient or the patient with cancer, I need you to think about becoming as metabolically healthy as possible, so that if you are then, because the first thing that's going to happen when you treat these, let's just say, for lack of, who do we care about? We care about our baby. So you treat a baby with this technology, and they have cancer, for example. We don't want the cancer to come back. So in order to feel better about that, we're going to think about the soup and say, what else can we do so that this cancer won't come back? So I'm really excited about this. I'm a little nervous about the cancer one because cancer with the mutations changing like crazy and all the cancers not being, like genetic can certainly be an issue. But I am excited, particularly about sickle cell, because again, if you're taking care of a kid with sickle cell, it is life altering, and the life expectancy is nothing close to what you would hope for any of our babies.
Thanks, Dr. Hampton. I just, if I can, I just want to dovetail off two things that you mentioned. I think are uh, very needed in this discussion. The therapy currently being looked at is going to help people that are 12 and up. And then there are two companies. One, well, I have three things. The second thing is there are two companies that are doing it. One does it like this, and it, says it makes the little clone. It says, go in there and tell them you're original. Why? Because I want to get into why am I saying that? Because you kind of got into looking at how it happened, right? So, Dr. Pete mentioned that some people have sickle cell trait, and then some people have sickle cell disease, right? And the body usually tries to go something like, so the versions of the cell, because cells, reproduce, mutate, but and also our genes go with survival, usually of the fittest, the strongest. In our genetic world, we call it the most dominant gene. So say I got two genes. One is walking around like, hey, the regular gene, I'm around here, it's like millions of me. Then you got the other one, it's like it's a few of me because my leg broke. So what's gonna happen when those genes come together? The one that got all the pieces, that's the most dominant, is gonna show. So why are my eyes brown? My eyes are brown because brown is the dominant gene. Dr. Well, why are some people's eyes green or blue or whatever? See, you thought you know. Because it's a recessive gene, and there's no gene there to say no, make brown. Because if brown is there, it's like, okay, right, we about to be brown. Most of the time. Let me say most of the time. So what happens with sickle cell? Sickle cell is a recessive gene. It's the gene that's walking around trying to walk, and it's like, right? And then the one with the hemoglobin A, the strong one, is walking around like, nah, I'm strong. I take care of this. You want to turn into a sickle? I think not. We're going to hold it together for this person. Now, if you get two parents that both have that recessive gene, then you get someone that's born with, when those recessive genes come together, you get someone that's born with sickle cell disease, because there's no gene to say, you know what, you're going to sickle when we get to the fingertips and things get tough, you're going to try to leave us? I think not. Let me take over, right? You don't have that there. So no matter what happens is that person ends up with sickle cell disease. It's inherited. So thank you so much for mentioning that, like how you get it and things like that. And then this therapy on the table that we're talking about is for people 12 and up.
And I'll just mention, you mentioned that there are two companies and we've met with both. The other one is Bluebird.
Mm-hmm.
Strange name for a research outfit, but
That's true. And they actually, oh, sorry. Right.
no, go ahead.
So that one actually has a different mechanism. So the one we mentioned takes the gene out, takes it to the lab, makes the one that's gonna be like, I'm the original. I was the dominant. I was here before you. I'm fetal hemoglobin. You know what? And then the body's like, you know what? You're right. You are the original, and starts making, making the cells without that don't sickle. That's that one. The bluebird one, I think it's bluebird. You said bluebird,
Yeah.
Congressman. The
Hmm.
bluebird one actually does the same thing but uses a different mechanism. Because okay, let's back up to the laboratory. We talked about what the patient experienced. We talked about what what's going on in the gene or the cell. Now let's talk about the technician in the lab. So they're walking up, they're getting their samples from someone just to make sure all the other genes match. Because if I give you something and your body reacts, it's like, I don't know that other gene, then it starts attacking the therapy and we got a whole different other problem, right? So I took the lab and made sure everything matched. Okay. You got an A here, you got a C here, you got a T here, you got a U here, match, match, match. Good. I'm good. Then they create what's going to be um, the dominant structure that's going to dominate the reproduction of cells in the future. And Bluebird actually puts it in a non-threatening virus and puts it in your blood. That virus then goes look at other cells and it attaches to other cells and says, "Let me send this. Let me slip you a little message." And it slips the new. I can't get the camera. Okay, I can't get the camera. It slips the new gene in. So Bluebird also actually uses a virus as the transport to get the therapy into the cell. Instead of saying, "I'm, you know what, I'm boss." Boom, you gonna make this from now on. Use the virus to connect. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
one of the things.
it
You
is supposed to be very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And the reason that we want to start these meetings with Health and Human Services is to see what, if anything, they have in mind relative to how, I mean, who gets the treatment. And of course, since everything costs, how does it get paid for? And how will it get paid for? Will there be some relationship between insurance companies and the government, or how many patients could, and the testimonies that people have given in terms of what happened to them as they've been treated. I happened to have attended a church yesterday where people would testify. Some of you might remember back when you go to church and people would stand up and testify. And so the testimonies of these people remind me of those testimonies that I heard yesterday as people would stand up and say, you know, I used to be an enforcer for the gangster disciples. And then something touched me, and I don't do that no more. And I
Mm-hmm.
do something else. And these people are saying, you know, they don't feel the pain anymore. And that they had to, one lady said she had to pinch herself to see if it was real. That the pain she'd been experiencing all her life, it just wasn't there. It was gone. And she couldn't believe it. So figuring out how to pay for it, I think is going to, you know, be the next movement of how do you pay for it.
Right. I read that the cost for one patient is $2.2 million. So that's not something that most people can afford to pay. And so I would say the people that testified yesterday were very lucky for the most part to have been part of some kind of trial that established the efficacy and the safety of this disease and probably did not have to pay for it. But the cost is going to be an overarching issue and a problem for most of the people, the majority of the people that have sickle cell anemia, because I can't see insurance companies wanting to pay that amount of money to cover that treatment. I think you'll need more people to testify in Congress and more people to come before you to really make the argument that this is something that's important and it is a priority moving forward. And part of the reason I'm saying that is I don't want those people that are listening to this conversation to think now there's something that's available to them and they can get it and they will no longer be afflicted by this thing called sickle cell disease. And that is not the case.
Can I just ask a question from Dr. Meyer and from Dr. Pete and Dr. Tony? In terms of the therapy, is this a one-time treatment or is this an ongoing process? Once.
It's a
So,
one-time treatment.
okay, so if it's a one-time treatment for this kind of money, I think we have to look also and look at things in terms of long-term. How much is it costing to treat sickle cell crisis, and how much does it cost in terms of the other things that is lost by just the healthcare is one issue. The other issue is the loss in terms of their time to be productive citizen or having more days to be productive because they're sick and unable to do the things that they may be qualified to do. So I think that we have to look in those kinds of terms. I know that it's difficult when we look at things and say, give me a pile of money, as opposed to looking at, yeah, when I really looked at this over the lifespan of this person, I'm going to be spending that money, almost that amount of money, taking care of them,
More.
and that their lives will be much better off if I make that investment. And so I think that we have to look in that kind of way at this process, as opposed to looking at what that one-time cost is versus paying that same amount of money over whatever the lifespan of that sickle cell patient. That cost is also going to be an astronomical cost, because some of these people end up being in the hospital so often, and they get so many different kinds of transfusion, the medication, all these kinds of things. There's also a cost there. And so I think we have to look at it in terms of that. Certainly the improvement in the quality of the individual is would be a great thing. But then also just looking at what the cost of the money that we are spending to provide care for that person, and is another issue that we have to, when we're comparing things that are comparable. When we're talking about money, we need to look at it in terms of those things.
I
Dr.
just want
Miller,
to add. I just want to add that this is to the point, Dr. Miller, that we have to think about. There are many therapies that we have, especially chemotherapeutic things, especially cancers, other kinds of things that are very expensive. And there are some chemotherapeutic and the kinds of things that are necessary. I don't know why I'm having so much of an echo, but let's see, I can't mute it. But there are other things. I mean, if we look at the cost of certain sort of pediatric cancers, you look at the long-term cost of some of these cancers that people are that you see advertised in some of the special hospitals. So, and then there's a lot of we look at chemotherapeutic agents for many of the cancers and for the time that it takes for a lot of those things. So I think that your point, Dr. Miller, of let's contextualize it so we can this is going to be sickle cell. This is going to be something that would not necessarily be available to the people who are suffering from it without the significant substance. It's like that. I looked at it when I was at, and we were buying chemotherapeutic agents for everything from cervical cancer and doing bone marrow transplants and doing all kinds of other things. So we have to take a look at the entire thing before we make a particular judgment about one particular entity without looking at the cost for a lot of things, and not only the cost, but what's the benefit. So we spend a lot of money on a lot of very expensive. I remember the mole surgeons that we used to use, these people that had malignant cell, and how much that used to cost just to get paid the doctor himself for like $600,000 for that kind of particular surgery. So we need to look at the whole cost and decide as a society because we got to make sure that we are valuing the lives of the people that we're talking about, and that value maybe because it may not work or they are from a certain economic status. We have to think about how we do this in a way that's fair and equitable.
Yeah, we have to be a steward of our resources, but we also have to be honest in that um, a lot of the resources are put towards things that are lobbied for. So I don't know if the mom who would stand before the people who make the decisions would have the power to influence those who need to be influenced. The way that the military industrial complex gets influenced, we know we got to have highways. We know we got to do research, education, but it's going to take a push, grassroots, to make sure that the priorities are balanced in such a way that as we try to take care of the entire population, we do it in a way that we have that political will to push forward. So I think it's a very challenging scenario, but I know my patients who were treated for hepatitis C, and that was expensive. It wasn't 2 point something million, but maybe it was 60, 70 grand or so. And ultimately, the prices came down. Ultimately, people were able to get that curative treatment. And of course, the consequences of having liver cirrhosis and cancer and all that other stuff downstream made that sound like a value proposition. So I think we'll get there. We'll have to be patient as we kind of negotiate this. But these are the types of things, in my opinion, that require the government to be involved. If we live in a capitalistic society that is so far capitalistic that we don't have common sense, and common sense says, can we take care of the population and have a country that's involved in doing that work? And maybe we can negotiate effectively with these companies. We want to make sure in a capitalistic country that they make profit for all the resources and research they had to do to generate this. And we want to reward them for that. But we also want to do it in a way that honors our resources, and that we also make sure those who deserve these technologies benefit from it. So again, it's very exciting, but in order for the average Joe to benefit from this, they're going to have to be in front of folks who make decisions and really encourage them to move forward. But I think we are. I mean, our congressman is bringing this topic to us, so I think he's aware and understands that this is something we need to create awareness around. And what we do is we support people who understand that your health is a critical part of your existence, and we need people to endorse these ideas.
Yeah, I want to provide a context and go back to what Dr. Miller was saying, because the argument he made was an ethical and a moral argument to do this. And that's not going to persuade people. That's not going to mean anything to a lot of people. The companies that developed this drug developed it with the understanding that they were going to get paid. They didn't do it because they thought and they probably, part of it was this thing that we could cure sickle cell, but we can also make a lot of money. So there were two things they were looking at: the ability to provide this treatment and get compensated for doing that work, which cost a lot of money. They want their money back. And then if you look on the other hand at the insurance companies, they're concerned about the impact of the bottom line. How is this going to impact my bottom line in terms of paying for this treatment? Because I got all these other things to pay for. So I think Dr. Tony is right. It's going to take a groundswell. It's going to take people like us and more people to actually push to make sure that this is available to as many people as possible. If that doesn't happen, if there's no groundswell, then it will be available, but it'll be a long time before most people will have access to it.
Well, I
Wow.
think that same. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Congressman.
Well, that same group that was testifying at this church that I was at, they also read a book that asks a question. Would a man light a candle and put it under the bed? So if you got a light, you, you got to figure out a way to let it shine
Mhm.
so that people will understand the good works. And we figure out a way to make it available in some way. And it requires probably a great deal of compromise where every entity that is involved is going to have to give a little. I mean, take a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of, that's the beauty of love. That's what the songs say. It's, and so I think politics, and I don't mean just the electoral, but I mean all of these processes. You know, somebody is working on trying to develop appeal. Now, whether or not he's going to be able to do it, but they developed this, so he may be able to develop a pill or a way where chemotherapy is not the only way of getting into one's system what is needed. So I'm optimistic. I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be tough, but I'm seriously optimistic about it because many of the things that we know now, we didn't know 50 years ago,
Absolutely.
30 years ago. Now,
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been such a stimulating conversation. And Dr. Miller, I think you really kicked it off when you talked about just that whole cost and that cost factor and looking over it. If you look at, I was reading in a medical journal where it says that one average day in an ICU unit is about $3,900 for one day in an ICU unit. There is no special treatments that day, and there is no ventilator. So there's a lot of things that we need to, as the congressman always says, yell out that we need assistance and help with. So I am excited that this is here. I am excited for those who will get the opportunity to benefit from it. And I'm excited for that first 12-year-old who will be able to have this treatment and be able to live their lives so much differently. I want to say hey to Dorothy Murphy, who is here with us, to Renee, who is here, Knowingly Insanity, she is here with us. Lisa Thompson is here with us. Sandale Scott is here just as well. Hey, Sandale, how are you? Hale Gatewood is here. Jay is here with us just as well. Chief Valdemir Talley is here with us, and he's saying hey to all. Laura Leone is here with us. Audrey J. Cox is here. Frank Ware is here. Oh, so the Ware family is watching on this evening and doing so much. Thank you guys so very, very much. Doretha Johnson is here with us. Tamika Thomas is here with us. Hey, Terry, Dr. Mason, Tamika's here. Shirley Howard is here with us just as well. Shirley is here listening. Harriet Scott is here with us just as well. Melanie from Cook County Hospital is here, and their staff is over there looking. They are working, but they are actually listening just as well. And Stephen Brown is here with us just as well. And Sharonda Brown is here. Want to say hey to our team over at the Core Center. I did get your text message out here from the Core Center, and I'm looking in my notes for that press release. He wanted to thank the congressman for the press release that he did for World AIDS Day, and he's asking if we would share it. I'm going to look for it and find it. He said he read it in the newspaper. So I'm looking through my emails to see if I can find it, and I will definitely share that right before we go off. And also I want to say hey to Derek Johnson, who is here with us. And Derek Johnson thanks the congressman for his 340B information that he shared just as well. And I think I shared that a little over a week ago, some information on 340B. And as soon as I can find those things, I will make sure that I share them with you just as well. To each and every one of you who have written your comments and your questions inside of the chat. As you know, if we did not get to it this week, we will definitely get to your questions on next week. Even if we have a different topic, we will take a few moments and answer your questions. I know there was a ton of questions that were sent in there about different forms of cancers and dealing with that, and we will make sure that we get to them just as well. Teresa, oh, of course, we make sure that we are here for you every Monday, and we know that your husband has been through 2 cancers and rare diseases, and I saw some of your questions, and if we cannot get to them, get you some answers in the chat, we will definitely bring them up on next week. She also wants to thank the congressman. She says, love that, Rep. Davis, and love the scripture. So she also wants to share that with you just as well. So I did find the 340B information. So Core Center, I'm still looking for the press release. I know I got it. But the congressman shared that ensuring affordable health care is his top priority. The 340B program helps to achieve this in all of the communities that he represents throughout the U.S. The 8 hospitals that's inside of our district, has expanded access to needed care for discounted drugs. And he's saying hashtag protect 340B. So that was the shared verbiage that we have put out there. And I thank you for asking. And of course, I would share it just on the fact that you had asked, but we did get that out. And I think most of our facilities that are represented here, the larger ones, are a part of our 340B. So they are here just as well. And to my core center, I know I got it. Okay, are you all right, Dr. Mason? All right, here is the information that was shared in Core Center. Thank you so much. He says they have cut it out of their newspaper and they have it on their bulletin board. It says the WHO, World Health Organization statistics share that 630,000 people died of AIDS in 2022, a 51% decrease for 1.3 million in 2010, and a 69% decrease for the 2.0 million in 2004. Today, we fly the red ribbon tall, supporting those living with HIV, remembering those who have died, and promoting understanding and education about HIV and AIDS. December 1st is World AIDS Day, and also is the time to acknowledge the strides made by the fight against HIV and AIDS and appreciate initiatives like the United States President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, for its significant impact on saving lives and creating paths towards an AIDS-free generation. The initiative and its 5 pillars, supporting health equity, sustainability, public health systems and securities, partnerships, and science, have saved more than 25 million lives, and 5.5 million babies have been born HIV-free as a result of this critical work funded by the program. Our call to action on World AIDS Day is a collective duty to honor the efforts of those who tirelessly fought against HIV and AIDS, and to renew our commitments to awareness, advocacy, and saving lives in the pursuits of an AIDS-free future. So that was the congressman's statement, and thank you so much to the Core Center for asking if we would share that. The Core Center also, some of their friends there want to also thank Dr. Green for all the great work that she does with HIV and AIDS. And they also want to thank Dr. Pete, who had some technical difficulties and had to fall off. He had to fall off because he had some tech difficulties, but they want to thank you guys. And they say they know you all personally, and they thank you guys for all that you do with your HIV and AIDS work. They say they love all the doctors here, but in celebrating of HIV, they want to thank you guys for your work. As always, we're going to go around and we're going to thank each and every one of you for being here with us on today, but we want our until next Mondays. So Dr. Hampton, I'm going to start with you. What's your until next Monday?
First of all, I want to thank all my followers who chimed in with questions. I will circle back and make sure that at least the questions that are directed at me are answered. So don't worry about that because we have a large panel, very important topic, and we wanted to make sure we were forward facing. I do want to acknowledge that for those who are wanting to learn more about cancer, I've had several conversations about cancer on my channel. So just search my name, Dr. Tony Hampton and Cancer. Very insightful discussions about cancer. Again, one that addresses metabolic health, cancer cells love sugar. Number two, using intermittent fasting before you do chemo is a very effective tool that you need to learn about. And then number three, repurposed medications and supplements that are helpful for cancer. So it addresses all of those areas. So if you know somebody who's suffering from cancer or at high risk for cancer, they need to be aware of those talking points in addition to the gene therapy talking points. So thank you guys for checking us out tonight. And until next Monday is that there is hope. And that hope is being realized. I remember the first day I saw somebody in Lake Forest driving around with a cell phone. It was this big box, and I was like, what is that? And now my kids, when I say that there was a time when they didn't have cell phones, they don't believe me. So things are going to get better. Let's stay inspired. And I promise if you hang in there, things will be good. So thank you, guys.
The bag phone. That's what it was. The bag phone. Well, we're going to start off our Until Next Mondays with hope. Dr. Tony talked about hope. Dr. Mason, your Until Next Monday. Well, I think you're muted, Dr. Mason. I think that's what it is. Well,
So
while we're waiting for Dr. Mason to unmute himself, Joe Harrington, you're Until Next Monday.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something that Dr. Tony said. While I'm not optimistic, I remain hopeful. I think anything is possible, and I think that we can make this happen. And my until next Monday, and I've said this before, I've used this before, in a world where you can be anything, be kind.
All right. So we started with hope. We're asking people to be kind. Dr. 100, you're Until Next Monday.
Until next Monday, the thought I want to plead with the community to start doing is getting active now. Limited or high priced therapies usually will flow the way they historically have flowed unless we intervene and start early. Don't wait till you notice that, all the therapies are on the north side and everything like that. Then we get surprised and we got to pay a white institution to study Black problems. Don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Get active now. Get active now. Find your local organizations, ask your doctors, look it up online, sickle cell organizations, get involved. Someone mentioned support our elected officials that support you. If they don't support, support the ones that's been supporting you. Get more involved, find out how you can do that. When the therapy comes, never stop at the no. If you are qualified and you've been living with sickle cell and you've been in pain and you have, demonstrated health records of visiting here, visiting there, in crisis, all this other stuff. If someone dares tell you no, because sometimes the system does that when it gets overwhelmed, let that be your first vitamin and proceed through all the no's like Pac-Man, eating little bits, until you get where you need to go. Complain, raise your voice, do all that stuff, okay? Take pride in yourself and advocate for yourself, This is a novel therapy. It is, if you read up on it, it's changing people's lives, and your life is just as important as the next.
All right. Get active, be kind, and be hopeful. All right. Well, something must have happened to Dr. Mason. Hopefully, I don't know, that he had a few internet problems. Dr. Graham, you're Until Next Monday.
So I just want to say how impressed I am with that therapy. My career began 40 years ago. And 40 years ago, when people came in with sickle cell, there really wasn't much we can do other than help them survive the pain and the crisis. And it really represents rather astonishing advances in medicine. So I think we have to keep pushing because it isn't just sickle cell. There are a number of other things that can be addressed this way. And I agree with Dr. Maya. You have to become active, you have to be in the know, and you have to push. That's the only way we're going to make progress.
So Doug is excited about the progress. Dr. Maya is telling you to be active. Joe said be kind. Dr. Tony said he's hopeful. Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
My until next Monday is that, as in most problems, they're usually not solved by individuals, but they're solved by a collection of people working together, uniting their efforts, pushing the envelope a little bit further. Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take unity. It's going to take, one person beating on the table versus millions of people beating on the table. Get you a little bit. You get you a lot closer to getting the results and getting you the resources that you need. And when you're talking about a lot of money, it's going to take a lot of folks working together to be able to bring about these changes. Because two things. First of all, I might not have sickle cell, but I don't know what and I know that my present grandchildren don't, but I don't know what my great grandchildren are going to be faced with. And so I think we need to look to forward in terms of those things to the future, what the future of people are going to have to deal with, whether it involves you personally. Is the fight is still there for us to fight. The battle is still there for us to fight, and we got to fight it. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem that continues to be debilitating, a problem that tend to be a burden and a difficult challenge. We can make that challenge easier by making certain that if there is something that will take care and eliminate these problems, that we push the envelope as hard as we can, that we support what we need to support and who we need to support to make certain that all those people that need the treatment and everybody that has the disease and is having issues and symptoms and need the treatment. So we need to come together and combine our efforts and make certain that we are that as a group, as a whole, as a nation, as a world, that no is not acceptable.
All right, Dr. Miller. No is not acceptable. Unite, work together. Excitement, getting active, being kind, having hope and being hopeful. And I love Teresa's acronym that she came up for the word hopeful or hope. She wrote hope. Hold on, pain ends. So I love it. Hold on, pain ends. I love that, Teresa. Thank you so much. Well, Congressman, take us home until next Monday.
Well, the person who wrote this article talked about the price of transforming lives. And she said that it's not yet clear how many patients will sign up for gene therapy or who is best suited for the treatment. Some will depend on the price set for the treatment and whether government and private insurance will cover the cost and those extras. Gene therapy for others is a rare, high price and has been set as high as $3.5 million. But also that gene therapy can prevent future damage to the body, but it cannot reverse the problems already created by the disease. And that's why we need to treat individuals when they are young. She say that sickle cell is like a hammer hitting a wall, causing a ding in the wall. He says, I can take away the hammer, but I cannot fix the wall. And so it does give us a tremendous amount of hope. And that's what this season is all about. That's what the idea of Yuletide, of Christmas. I was so inspired people dealing with the homeless issue and all. We've been dealing with it, I guess, forever. And of course, I and a group of people that I know for about the last 25, 30 years, every Christmas Eve, we've gone out to shelters. We've taken people brand new coats and jackets and fruit. And one of our friends was diagnosed the other day with prostate cancer. And he's very popular amongst us because he's such a great guy. He was in the hospital and then he had to get transferred to another hospital. He got in and he got the procedure done and all that. I looked up Friday and he was at my door with about 50 brand new coats and jackets. I say, JJ, why aren't you at home in the bed or whatever? He said, well, we always get these jackets for the homeless people and all. And so I got somebody to help me bring them over. And that changed my whole notion about possibilities and so forth. That here's this guy who was just diagnosed 2 weeks ago with prostate cancer, been in the hospital, both the University of Chicago and Northwestern, and he's out bringing jackets to give to homeless people. And so there is a great deal of hope. There is a great deal of possibility. And there are people. So if any of you are not doing anything, we have our annual Christmas dinner on the 1st, on the 18th, rather. That's Monday of next week at 12 o'clock at the Gold Dome. It's focused on senior citizens, but some of you young people can come also. And everything on the menu except the peach cobbler is approved by Dr. Mason. So please come and join us. Thank you so much for a very stimulating discussion. It's really been great, and I can't thank you enough. Have a good week, and we hope to see you next Monday. Good night.